I'm Alexis Moreno, 28, gripping my grandmother's scarf while the priest's words drift like fog over the Portland, Maine shoreline. My family's grief feels staged. Mom dabs at dry eyes, whispers, "Bad angle," and tilts her phone for a better shot. Dad's gaze never leaves his stock app. Jacob, my brother, stares at me like I'm a problem to be solved. Then the attorney clears his throat and detonates the room. I inherit $22.5 million. Mom's smile snaps off like a light. Dad mutters, "No way." Jacob's glare sharpens, accusation without a trial. A video plays of my grandparents, their voices steady. "Some of you only ever saw our money." The scarf warms under my fingers. The rest of me goes cold. That night at dinner, Mom leans in, voice sugar-coated and sharp. "Sign over control." "No," I say. Her hand cracks across my cheek. "You don't deserve it. You have no say here." Chairs scrape. Forks freeze. I don't. I stand, walk out, and pull my phone with hands that won't stop shaking. 4 words cancel everything immediately. By morning, Dad's voicemail hisses through my speaker. "What the hell did you do, Alexis? Fix this or you're done." Behind him, Mom is shouting about a power outage. Jacob whines about no Wi-Fi. Service is off. Bills exposed. The performance has lost its lights. I lock my apartment, keys biting my palm, knowing Dad controls the lease. One call from him and I'm out. I drive toward the harbor house, the bay peeling out of the dawn like a promise they can't touch. The front door opens before I knock. "Miss Alexis, welcome," says a calm voice. Luis Alvarez, estate manager, 15 years. He presses a small USB into my hand. "They said you'd need this if family turned ugly." If. My grandmother knitted courage into this scarf. My grandfather taught me not to blink when men threatened to. I slide the USB into an old computer in his study and watch the truth load. Transfers, emails, journals, signatures, harvested in hospital rooms. Thousands wired into Jacob's dead apps. Plans to redecorate that read like listings. They thought I'd fold. I'm not folding. Before I tell you how I turned the lights back on the truth, not their house, tell me what city you're listening from right now. I want to know how far this story has traveled, because it started in a quiet room with a slap and a scarf, and it's about to leave Portland's shoreline. The next knock on that door didn't come from family. It came from the people who would help me burn their lies to the ground. The knock on the harbor house door pulled me out of the files still glowing on Grandpa's computer screen. My chest tightened. For a second, I imagined it was Mom, Dad, and Jacob barging in, their rage spilling across the threshold. But when I opened the door, it was Denise Ellis, the housekeeper who had served my grandparents for years. She carried a tray of tea, her hands trembling just enough that the cups rattled. Her eyes were swollen, grief painted on her face. She set the tray down gently, then looked at the USB drive in my hand. "You're reading Mrs. Crystal's records," she said softly, her voice breaking. I nodded, my throat too tight to answer. Denise's gaze hardened. She left the room, only to return with a battered cardboard box. She placed it on the desk, dust puffing into the air. "She asked me to keep these safe for you." Inside were loan agreements, startup proposals, unpaid receipts, even photocopies of hospital paperwork. My stomach twisted as I skimmed the pages. Mom had pushed contracts under Grandma's frail hands when IV lines still ran from her wrists. My father's signature showed up again and again, requesting more money for projects that never materialized. Jacob's name marked failed app after failed app. I read Grandma's handwriting in the margin of a journal. She says it's for redecorating, but I overheard her whisper about market value. It was betrayal in black ink. Denise lowered her eyes. "They chipped away at her, Alexis, piece by piece. She wanted you to have proof." My fingers tightened on the scarf around my neck, the fabric damp where tears had fallen without me realizing. The slap at dinner replayed in my head, but this was worse. My phone buzzed. Brandy Kim's name lit up on the screen. "On my way. Heard about the mess." Minutes later, she stepped into the harbor house, her coat damp with rain, the smell of coffee clinging to her. Without a word, she hugged me. When she pulled back, her eyes scanned the papers spread across the desk. "This is insane," she whispered, pulling out one sheet. "Look, Jacob funneled $30,000 into some app that never even launched. They've been draining your grandparents for years." She opened her laptop, her fingers flying across the keys. While my panic had left the evidence scattered, her focus built order. Rows of transfers appeared on the screen, glowing like neon signs. "Every time your dad begged for cash, another account emptied," Brandy said. "They weren't sloppy. They were deliberate." I stared at the numbers, the evidence stacking higher than any accusation they'd ever thrown at me. By the afternoon, the harbor house shifted. It no longer felt like a safe corner of my childhood. It felt like a command center. Louise checked the gates. Denise brewed more tea and stacked documents. Brandy sat beside me, her laptop humming, the glow reflecting in her determined eyes. Still, I couldn't shake the words Mom had thrown at me. "You don't deserve it." That night, I lay awake listening to the steady crash of waves against the rocks. I pressed Grandma's scarf against my cheek where her slap had landed, and for the first time, I cried. Not for the inheritance, but for the family I had believed in. The next morning, Luis answered another knock. This time it was Ryan Hayes, the family attorney. His leather briefcase looked heavy enough to anchor a ship. He clasped my shoulder firmly. "Your grandparents trusted me for 20 years. I'm here." Behind him came Victoria Grant, the financial advisor, her tablet glowing with account codes. Then Anna Reed, Grandpa's longtime business partner, her expression sharp. Denise slipped back in carrying another folder. Brandy scooted her chair closer to mine, her laptop already open. I looked around the dining room, suddenly filled with faces I hadn't expected. Not blood, not family by name, but every one of them steadier than the people who raised me. Ryan spread documents across the table. "We need to catalog everything." Denise laid out bank statements, highlighting transfers into Dad's doomed real estate deals. Victoria revealed blocked withdrawals from estate accounts. Anna described strange calls to the seafood chain. Finally, Luis placed a small hard drive on the table. "The security system recorded everything," he said. When he plugged it in, the room fell silent. Footage from the funeral flickered to life. There was my mother, wrapping silverware in her scarf. My father slipping a ledger into his coat. Jacob tucking a painting under his arm. Their fake tears hadn't even dried. "That's theft," Ryan said, his pen scratching across yellow legal paper. My heart dropped. I thought betrayal would come in whispers, but here it was, captured in grainy pixels, undeniable. My phone buzzed. I pressed play on a new voicemail. "You're making a mistake, Alexis," Jacob's voice said. "Hand it over, or we'll make things public." His words filled the room like smoke. Brandy's lips curled. He's bluffing. Still, they're coordinated. That Instagram post wasn't random. She pulled her phone closer to show me. There was Mom, mascara streaked, captioned "Betrayed by family fighting for what's ours." Hundreds of comments poured in, strangers calling me greedy. I rubbed my temples, heat rising behind my eyes. "They won't stop." Ryan's voice cut through. "Then neither will we. With this evidence, we can file for protective orders, but we need everything you've got." The table was covered in folders, receipts, ledgers, video stills. The pile was suffocating. Yet as I looked at it, a flicker of something steady grew inside me. Maybe I wasn't the one on trial anymore. The dining room still smelled faintly of tea and old wood polish. Papers covered the table like a battlefield map. I stared at them until the numbers blurred, my body heavy with exhaustion. Yet the people around me, Ryan with his steady pen, Victoria bent over her glowing tablet, Anna with her sharp questions, Denise guarding her folders, Brandy typing furiously, kept moving. For the first time in days, I wasn't standing alone. But the war had only shifted. Mom's Instagram posts multiplied, each one more vicious than the last. I could feel her tightening the net, turning strangers into a jury I'd never agreed to stand before. Dad's voice still rang in my head from that voicemail. "Fix this or you're done." Jacob's threats hovered like smoke, clinging to every breath I took. Brandy tapped my arm. "You need to see this." She angled her laptop toward me. My mother's post had gone viral, hundreds of comments from people in Portland I actually knew. Neighbors, parents of my students, local business owners. Their words were sharp, greedy, unstable, betraying your own. I clenched my fists under the table until my nails pressed crescents into my skin. Ryan's voice cut in, calm but firm. "We need to gather everything, documentation, digital traces, witness statements. The more airtight, the better." Luis hovered at the doorway. "The gates are locked. No one gets in unless you say so." His assurance should have comforted me. Instead, it made me realize how cornered I truly was. Hours passed with the sound of keyboards, paper shuffling, hushed voices. Brandy pieced digital records together with methodical precision. Victoria highlighted bank trails. Denise pulled out receipts I hadn't known existed. Every new page stabbed at me. My parents scheming, Jacob draining accounts, my mother whispering about selling the harbor house like it was nothing but an asset. Each revelation was a wound, but each wound also hardened something inside me. By night, I sat alone in Grandpa's study, the scarf wound tight around my neck. The harbor outside was a smear of black water and silver moonlight. I remembered Grandpa's words, "Stand firm, Alexis," and wondered if he knew how much standing firm would cost me. The next morning, the pressure only deepened. Brandy burst into the study, phone in hand. "Alexis, look." A video played. My grandparents' faces flickered on screen, their voices stiff and stilted. "Alexis pressured us to change the will," the fake grandma said. "We were scared." My blood turned cold. "That's a deep fake," Brandy said, pausing the clip. Her eyes narrowed. "Jacob's tech fingerprints all over it." I gripped the desk edge, knuckles white. Watching my grandparents' image twisted against me was worse than any slap, any insult. I called Ryan immediately. "They're escalating. They faked a video." "Send it," he said, his tone clipped. Within minutes, he replied, "This is slander, and it strengthens our case." Brandy's fingers blurred over the keyboard. Metadata shows it was made 2 days ago, uploaded from an IP address tied to Jacob's company servers. Amateur work, but convincing enough to fool the public. I wanted to throw up. Instead, I whispered, "They'll stop at nothing." Victoria arrived not long after with fresh updates. Dad had tried to breach the estate accounts again, denied because of new codes. Anna reported anonymous emails sent to suppliers, questioning the seafood chain's stability. My family wasn't just tearing me down, they were targeting the business that fed half the town. Ryan came back to the harbor house that evening, his briefcase heavier than ever. He laid the evidence across the table, the funeral theft footage, Denise's records, Brandy's deepfake analysis. With this, we can file emergency protective orders. Maine courts prioritize harassment cases with clear evidence. I nodded, my resolve like stone. Do it, file everything. The room moved with urgency. Brandy compiled a report of digital artifacts proving the deepfake was fake. Pixel glitches, audio distortions. Ryan added it to his legal packet. Victoria locked accounts tighter. Anna warned store managers to stay alert. Denise handed over Grandma's handwritten notes about Mom's schemes. The harbor house buzzed like a war room, but when the hum slowed, silence hit me harder. This wasn't just paperwork and legal codes. This was my family turning every weapon they had against me. That night, Brandy sat across from me, the glow of her laptop painting her face. She squeezed my hand. "They're desperate, which means they're scared." Her words should have been a comfort. Instead, they made me wonder what a desperate family would try next. By the end of the week, Ryan delivered the news. Temporary protective orders granted. Mom, Dad, and Jacob barred from contacting me or the business directly. Violations meant fines, even jail time. Relief flickered, but it barely had time to breathe before Brandy shoved her phone toward me. "Look!" Another post. My mother again, mascara streaked, her caption venomous. "My daughter has always been troubled." This time she tagged local businesses. The comments were worse. Some from people I'd known since childhood. My stomach twisted. Portland was starting to believe her. I leaned against the cold window pane, staring out at the gray waves hammering the rocks. My family thought they could bury me under lies, but every time they shoveled, they dug themselves deeper. Still, I couldn't ignore the sinking truth. Their lies were spreading faster than I could fight them, and the community I needed was starting to listen. The chamber luncheon was only days away, and I knew they would come. The Portland Chamber of Commerce luncheon should have been a celebration. The hall buzzed with polished laughter, clinking glasses, and the smell of buttered rolls. A plaque rested on the podium, engraved with my grandparents' names, ready to honor decades of their seafood legacy. I sat near the front, my hands folded in my lap, the scarf wound tight around my wrist like armor. Ryan Hayes leaned close, his tie perfectly knotted, his voice steady. "Stay calm, the community is watching." Anna Reed sat on my other side, nodding toward a cluster of employees in company polos. "They're here to back you, no matter what happens." I took a shaky breath, scanning the room. The chandeliers sparkled, the carpet muffled every footstep. For a moment, it almost felt safe. Then the doors swung open. Mom entered first, dressed in black like she was still attending a funeral. Her eyes scanned the crowd, then locked on me. Dad followed, posture stiff, his smile rehearsed. Jacob trailed behind, avoiding my gaze, his phone clenched in one hand. My stomach turned cold. Mom wasted no time. She glided straight to the podium where Tom Wheeler, the chamber president, stood ready to speak. "There's been a misunderstanding about the estate," she announced loudly enough for the microphones to pick up. Her hand trembled just enough to make her tears look real. "We're here to claim family heirlooms rightfully ours." Gasps rustled across the room. Dad stepped forward, smoothing his jacket. "The business belongs to all of us, not just one person." His voice was calm, but his eyes flicked toward me with venom. I stood, my knees steady only because I forced them to be. "Those heirlooms were left to me," I said, my voice carrying across the hall. "The will is clear." A heavy silence fell. Then Mom's smile cracked, her voice rising. "Alexis isn't equipped to manage this. She's confused, unstable." The words landed like daggers. I felt the weight of every eye in the room shift toward me, judging, wondering if her story was true. Before I could speak, a voice from the back cut through. "I saw you take silverware from their house the day of the funeral." Mrs. Larson, my grandparents' neighbor, stood tall, her phone raised. On the screen glowed a photo of Mom clutching the stolen set. Murmurs spread like fire, people whispering, snapping pictures, checking their feeds. Dad's face tightened, but Mom pushed forward, her voice shrill. "That's a family matter. None of this belongs in public." But the room no longer belonged to her. A store manager rose next. "We received anonymous emails trying to scare our suppliers, but we know the Moreno's real wishes. We stand with Alexis." His employees nodded, some clapping. Brandy leaned close, whispering fast. "Check Twitter." She tilted her phone toward me. Local reporters were live tweeting, quoting Mrs. Larson's accusations. A news van idled outside, its camera pointed at the entrance. Dad whipped around, his voice low but sharp. "Who called the media?" Another neighbor, Mr. Coleman, raised his hand. "I did. We protect our own in Portland." The crowd erupted, some cheering, some gasping, phones flashing everywhere. Mom's face flushed crimson, her perfect image fracturing under the bright lights. Anna stood, her voice strong. "The seafood chain thrives because of Eric and Crystal's integrity, not yours." Employees clapped louder, their loyalty cutting through the tension like a blade. I felt my pulse hammering, my throat dry. Tom Wheeler, clearly unsettled, stepped back from the podium. The room buzzed with voices, each louder than the last. Ryan placed a folder in my hands. "Show them." I lifted the will, my fingers trembling but my voice firm. "Grandma and Grandpa chose me to carry their legacy. Every move you've made proves why." For a heartbeat, silence. Then applause thundered through the hall. But not everyone clapped. Mom's eyes darted wildly, searching for control. Dad grabbed her arm, muttering, "This isn't over." Jacob's shoulders hunched, guilt flickering in his eyes for just a second before he looked away. They turned toward the exit, but the cameras followed. Their retreat wasn't private. It was public. broadcast in real time, every step recorded. I should have felt victorious. The crowd had chosen sides. The town had seen through their lies. Yet as Tom Wheeler handed me the plaque, as the audience rose in ovation, a pit opened in my stomach. Because victory in that room didn't mean safety outside it. I knew my family. I knew the way they fought when cornered. And as I held that plaque warm under my palms, I realized something chilling. This wasn't their end. It was the moment they'd decide how far they were willing to go to destroy me. The Portland Chamber of Commerce luncheon was supposed to be a day of pride, a celebration of everything my grandparents had built over decades. The banquet hall glowed with soft chandeliers, their light bouncing off white tablecloths and polished silverware. Waiters floated between tables carrying trays of steaming rolls, butter melting into the crust. The smell of coffee mingled with the salt of the harbor air that drifted through the open doors. Conversations overlapped in low hums, businessmen discussing contracts, teachers greeting neighbors, reporters whispering at the back. At the front stood the podium, a bronze plaque perched on it with my grandparents' names etched into the metal, Eric and Crystal Moreno, for service to Portland. The sight should have made me proud. Instead, my stomach was a tight knot. I sat in the front row, my hands resting on my lap, Grandma's scarf wrapped twice around my wrist as though I needed a tether to something real. The fabric smelled faintly of lavender. Each time I breathed in, it steadied me. Ryan Hayes leaned close. His tie was neatly knotted, his glasses catching the chandelier light. "Remember," he whispered, "stay calm. The community is watching." Anna Reed sat on my other side. Her blazer was dark, her expression sharp, but when she looked at me, her voice softened. "The employees are here," she said, nodding toward a group in company polos clustered together at a corner table. Their faces were steady, determined. "They've got your back." I nodded, swallowing hard. The weight of every gaze in the room pressed against me, even though most weren't watching yet. They would. Tom Wheeler, the chamber president, a gray-haired man with a deep voice and a practiced smile, stepped up to the microphone. He tapped it lightly and feedback hummed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we gather to honor the Moreno family whose seafood business has been a cornerstone of Portland for decades." He lifted the plaque. "Their work has built jobs, trust, and a legacy that stands strong." Applause swelled across the room. My chest tightened with something close to relief. Maybe, just maybe, I could stand here without my family turning it into another battlefield. Then the doors opened. Every head turned. My mother swept into the hall in a sleek black dress, her makeup flawless, her eyes glistening like she'd rehearsed grief for the cameras. Behind her walked my father, his posture upright, a polished smile masking the venom in his eyes. Jacob trailed after, shoulders hunched, phone clenched in his hand like a weapon he hadn't decided how to use. The applause faltered, thinning into uneasy whispers. They hadn't been invited. Mom's heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she cut across the room. "Excuse me," she called out, loud enough that the microphone caught her voice. She stood beside Tom Wheeler, her hand on the podium. "There's been a misunderstanding about the estate." Her voice trembled just enough to look authentic. "We're here to claim family heirlooms, rightfully ours." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Dad stepped forward, his jacket perfectly buttoned, his tone smooth. "This business belongs to all of us, not just one person. We want what's fair." Every muscle in my body screamed to run, but I stood, my knees stiff, my throat dry. "Those heirlooms were left to me," I said, my voice carrying farther than I expected. "The will is clear." A hush swept across the room. Eyes turned toward me, some sympathetic, some skeptical. Mom's smile hardened into a mask. She leaned into the microphone. "Alexis isn't equipped to manage this. She's confused, unstable." Her words sliced the air cleanly, cutting through the fragile dignity I had left. The audience shifted, whispering to each other. I could feel their judgment crawling over me, wondering if maybe she was right. Before I could form a response, a voice rose from the back. I saw you take silverware from their house the day of the funeral." Mrs. Larson, my grandparents' neighbor, stood tall, her phone raised. On its screen glowed a photo of Mom with silverware tucked into her scarf. The image was grainy, but clear enough. The crowd erupted into murmurs. Phones came out, screens lit up. Some people were already scrolling, finding the photo online. Mom's face tightened, but she forced a watery smile. "That's a private family matter," she said quickly. "It has no place here." But the room was no longer hers to control. A seafood store manager in a company polo rose from his seat. His voice carried across the hall. "We received anonymous emails trying to scare our suppliers, but we know the Morenos' real wishes. We stand with Alexis." Applause broke out, scattered but strong. Employees nodded, some clapping harder, others shouting their agreement. I felt heat rush into my face. My pulse thudded in my ears. I wanted to believe them, to take their support as solid ground, but Mom's words still lingered in the air, confused, unstable. Brandy leaned close, her phone in hand. Her whisper was urgent. "Twitter's blowing up. Local reporters are live tweeting this right now. Mrs. Larson's photo is already trending." She tilted her phone. Through the glass windows at the back of the hall, I caught sight of a news van idling outside, its satellite dish pointed skyward. The logo was unmistakable. Dad's jaw tightened. He turned, scanning the crowd. "Who called the media?" he hissed. "I did," Mr. Coleman said firmly, raising his hand. Another neighbor. His voice was steady. "We protect our own in Portland." The room thundered with murmurs, half outrage, half applause. Cameras flashed. Some people shouted questions. Mom's face flushed crimson, her lips trembling as she tried to regain control. "This is a family matter," she snapped, her voice cracking. "It shouldn't be paraded in front of strangers." But strangers had become witnesses, and witnesses had become judges. Anna Reed rose from her seat, her voice sharp and clear. "The seafood chain thrives because of Eric and Crystal's integrity, not yours." She gestured toward the employees in the room. "And we will not let your lies erase that." Cheers spread from the employees' tables. Their applause grew louder, cutting through the tension like a blade. My heart pounded so hard it felt like the whole room could hear it. I pressed the scarf tighter against my wrist, grounding myself in the fabric. Tom Wheeler shifted uncomfortably, glancing between us. The event had slipped out of his hands. His eyes darted to Ryan. Ryan reached into his briefcase, pulled out a folder, and pressed it into my hands. His voice was quiet but firm. "Show them." I lifted the will. The paper felt heavy, though it was only a few pages. My hands trembled, but when I spoke, my voice rang steady. "My grandparents chose me to carry their legacy. Every action you've taken since proves why." The silence that followed stretched long enough for me to hear my own heartbeat. Then applause erupted. Thunderous, overwhelming, rolling across the hall until it drowned out everything else. But victory felt hollow. Mom's eyes darted around the room, frantic, searching for a lifeline. Dad grabbed her arm, his teeth clenched. "This isn't over," he muttered, loud enough for me to hear. His words curled around my spine like smoke. Jacob trailed behind them, his shoulders sagging, guilt flickering in his eyes for only a second before he dropped his gaze to the floor. They turned toward the exit, the news cameras tracking every step of their retreat. Their united front cracked under the weight of the crowd's judgment. I should have felt triumphant. The town had seen them exposed. The employees had chosen sides. The neighbors had spoken the truth. But as Tom Wheeler finally handed me the plaque, its polished surface cool against my palms, a pit opened in my stomach. Applause roared around me, but it blurred, muffled like I was underwater. Because I knew my parents, I knew Jacob. Defeat in public didn't end fights in private. And the way they walked out, faces set, eyes burning, told me something I didn't want to admit out loud. This wasn't the end. It was the moment they decided just how far they were willing to go to destroy me. The applause from the chamber luncheon still rang in my ears hours later, long after the crowd had dispersed and the plaque lay heavy in my hands. Portland had clapped for me, yes, but the look in my parents' eyes as they walked out, tight-lipped, burning, was enough to remind me that applause wasn't protection. By the next morning, their retaliation came swift. Mom's Instagram pulsed with another video, this time her voice shaky, eyes red, whispering to her thousands of followers, "My own daughter turned against us. She's stealing what belongs to the family." The post spread like wildfire. Local business owners I'd grown up knowing were in the comments, questioning my character, doubting me. Brandy slammed her laptop shut. "She's turning the whole town against you." I leaned against the harbor house window, the glass cold against my temple, the gray waves beyond hammering the rocks. Then we show them the truth, and truth we had in abundance. Ryan Hayes arrived within the hour, his briefcase stuffed with folders. He spread them across Grandpa's desk. Denise's bank records, Victoria's financial reports, the USB full of emails, Anna's testimony from seafood suppliers, the funeral footage Luis had recovered. Then Brandy slid her laptop forward. On the screen froze the deepfake video my family had circulated, my grandparents' faces twisted into lies. "Look here," she said, zooming in. Pixel distortions flickered at the edges, audio glitched mid-sentence. Sloppy AI work and metadata linked straight back to Jacob's startup servers. Ryan scribbled notes furiously. "This is gold. Harassment, theft, defamation, we have grounds for everything. Maine courts don't play around with this kind of evidence." My chest tightened, half fear, half adrenaline. "So what do we do?" "We file emergency protective orders," Ryan said. "Cite every violation, every theft, every lie, and we hit them before they know what's coming." For once, I wasn't reacting. I was striking back. The harbor house turned into a war room. Luis monitored the gates, his phone buzzing with updates from the security system. Victoria locked down estate accounts tighter, blocking another withdrawal attempt from Dad. Anna called store managers, warning them to report suspicious emails. Denise stacked Grandma's handwritten notes about Mom's schemes into a neat pile, her hands shaking but steady. I sat at the head of the table, my grandmother's scarf around my neck, my pulse racing. For the first time, I didn't feel like prey. I felt like a storm gathering. That night, Ryan filed the packet in court. The response was quick. Temporary protective orders granted. Mom, Dad, and Jacob were barred from contacting me or the business. Any violation meant fines or even jail. For a moment, I exhaled. Then Brandy's phone lit up with another post. She shoved it across the table. She doubled down. It was Mom again, mascara running, captioned, "She's always been troubled." Old photos of me as a teenager filled the screen, dredged up like evidence. Locals I'd once trusted liked and shared them. My throat burned. No court order could stop the sting of betrayal spilling into my community. Ryan placed a hand on the table. "Let them talk. We'll handle this where it matters, in court." The next morning, Dad tried again. He emailed the school where I taught, painting me as unstable, unfit to work with children. My principal forwarded it to me with a note. "We don't believe a word of this, but thought you should know." The humiliation cut deep. Then came the voicemail from Jacob, his voice low, menacing. "You're making a mistake, Alexis. Hand it over, or we'll make things public." I played it on speaker. Silence followed. Then Ryan spoke. "That's extortion, and we'll use it." Still, every angle of my life felt under siege. At night, I scrolled through comments from neighbors I'd known since childhood, some siding with my mother's performance, others staying quiet. The isolation threatened to choke me. But each time, Brandy was there. She squeezed my hand and whispered, "They're desperate. That means we're winning." Her words carried me into the courthouse days later. The judge listened as Ryan laid out our case, the theft footage, the deepfake analysis, the forged signatures, the harassing posts. He spoke with the authority of someone who had known my grandparents for decades. Victoria presented clean financial reports, blocking every attempted theft. Anna testified to anonymous calls and emails. Denise unfolded letters Mom had shoved under Grandma's pen in hospital rooms. Luis provided video logs of every act at the funeral. I sat in the courtroom, my scarf wound tight, my heart hammering. My parents across the aisle looked polished, controlled. Mom in her black dress, Dad in his suit, Jacob tapping on his phone like none of it mattered. But when Ryan played the funeral footage, Mom stuffing silverware into her purse, Dad pocketing ledgers, Jacob slipping a painting under his jacket, the courtroom air shifted. Gasps filled the room. Even the judge's brows rose. Then Brandy took the stand, her laptop open. The deepfake video accusing Alexis of pressuring her grandparents? Fake. Here's the metadata, the pixel distortions, the IP address tied to Jacob's company. They tried to fabricate evidence. She clicked, and the courtroom screen filled with freeze frames of glitches and artifacts. The judge leaned forward. This was distributed publicly? Yes, Your Honor, Brandy said firmly. Silence. For the first time, my parents didn't look so composed. By the end of the hearing, the judge extended the protective orders and warned of harsher penalties for violations. Ryan filed additional motions citing defamation, theft, and harassment. My parents walked out stone-faced, Jacob trailing, eyes darting nervously. Outside, cameras waited. Microphones swung toward me. Reporters shouted questions. Alexis, do you have a statement? I held the scarf tight, lifted my chin, and said only, truth lasts longer than lies. The crowd erupted in flashes and shouts. That night, back at the Harbor House, the team gathered again. Brandy drafted a simple public post, quoting my words from court. We'll wait until the orders are official, she said. Ryan agreed. Victoria updated me on stable investments. Anna confirmed the seafood chain's loyalty. Denise lit candles in the dining room, as though trying to wash the air clean. For the first time in weeks, I felt a fragile sense of control. But then Luis entered, holding his phone. His face was grim. They've already violated the orders. The room went silent. They contacted a supplier tonight, spreading more lies about you mismanaging the business. The anger hit like fire. My parents had walked out of court hours ago and already crossed the line. Ryan snapped his briefcase shut. Then they've just handed us more ammunition. I looked around the room, the team I hadn't chosen, but who had chosen me. My grandparents' voices echoed in memory. Stand firm. I thought of the plaque from the chamber still sitting on the table, proof that Portland had my back. But I also knew my family wasn't finished. And their next move could be the one that pushed everything over the edge. 6 months after the courtroom battles, I sat at my desk in the elementary school, the plaque with my name, Alexis Moreno, teacher, still grounding me more than any fortune could. Outside, the Harbor House stood firm against the Atlantic winds, no longer a place of betrayal but of rebuilding. The Moreno Foundation had launched its first scholarship program. 5 teenagers walked into my classroom holding acceptance letters, their hands shaking, eyes wide. I told them, my grandparents believed in building futures, not hoarding wealth. This is yours now. One girl whispered, this changes everything. I saw myself in her, wishing I'd heard those words at her age. The business thrived under Anna Reed's leadership. Employees now shared profits in a plan I had pushed for. Victoria sent me reports of stable growth. Luis uncovered my grandfather's old journals from the attic, his handwriting looping across the pages, his notes about hard work, integrity, and standing firm. Denise lit candles at the Harbor House table, which once held lies but now echoed with laughter. And my parents? Their influencer gigs collapsed. Brand deals evaporated when the truth surfaced. Dad's real estate empire crumbled under bankruptcy court. Jacob's startup dissolved when investors pulled out, wary of scandal. They kept sending messages, pleas, excuses, even threats. But I blocked them all. Their voices faded into static. One afternoon, I sat on the harbor steps, the sea air cutting sharp and clean. A student's words echoed in my head. My parents say I owe them for everything. I handed her a packet of resources, the same advice I now lived by. You don't owe them your worth, I told her, my voice steady. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who shows up when the lights go out, who holds your hand in the storm, who protects rather than takes. My grandparents taught me that lesson in silence, and their legacy lives not in money, but in action. As the sun set, the water caught fire with light. I breathed deep, knowing the fight was behind me. The harbor house, once scarred by betrayal, was now alive with hope. And to you listening now, wherever you are, whatever storm you've faced, remember this: setting boundaries is not cruelty, it's survival. Sometimes family isn't the people who raised you, it's the people who stayed when everyone else walked away. If my story speaks to you, share it. Tell me where you're listening from, because stories like mine aren't rare. They're just too often silenced. And maybe, by telling the truth out loud, we can remind each other that no matter how deep betrayal cuts, healing can be louder. And if you've stayed with me through this journey, it means something in my story resonated with you. I'd love for you to be part of this community where stories of truth, resilience, and family find a home. So if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel. That way, you won't miss the next story. And together, we can make sure voices like mine, and maybe yours, are never silenced again.